Welcome to the Optimum Podcast. I am your host, Melissa Franks, and today we are talking about the 4 lessons that I have learned since starting my own business. If you are new here, welcome. What you need to know in order to get us going is that in the fall of 2023, the startup that I was working with failed. And within minutes, I needed to make a massive pivot and figure out how I was going to continue to put food on the table while also managing some things in my personal life. If you have not been here before, there is prior podcasts where you can go kind of see what the last year has looked like. Today, what I really want to focus on is what I thought I knew versus what I know now about supporting businesses, leveraging my expertise. If you don't know what I do, I am a fractional chief operating officer. And what that means is that I work part-time with small businesses, providing them the expertise and the skills and the tactics and the principles that a full-time COO would do for a company, but at the fraction of a price and time. And how this looks is different for every single business. And eyes wide open when I needed to hit the pavement and find work that was flexible because that's what I needed in my life. What I wasn't sure is how this was really going to shake out. In fact, the first role that I had was really just doing friend a favor, and the friend doing me a favor too, quite honestly, by giving me a little bit of income. And what I did know is I had a whole bunch of expertise and I knew how to work with startups and established businesses and develop plans and strategy and all those things. Just wasn't sure how I was going to take that knowledge that I had working inside of big corporate environments or early stage startups and translate it to somebody else's vision and where it stood. What I learned really, really quickly is that if you have the foundation of the expertise, it allows you to be nimble with its application. And so what I'm going to talk today about is just things that I have learned as I made the shift. Now, this could apply to you if you're changing a job, if you're going to a new company. It could apply if you're starting your own business. It could literally apply anywhere, because really what I'm talking about today is just the things that I have learned over the course of the last 12 months, almost. We're so close to being there. We're like at 11 months. And hopefully that will help you as you start to navigate any sort of changes that you have in your life. So we're going to break down these lessons that I have. This is going to be short and sweet. If you have any questions, you can always DM me on Instagram. I would love to get in conversation with you about what I have learned and how you can take those lessons to apply it to your current situation. So the very first thing that I learned is that one size does not fit all. There are thousands of articles and blogs and how-to guides and YouTube videos and etc. that explain to an entrepreneur how they should set up their business, what they should do first, how things should go. And the fact of the matter is that there are some things that are constant and there are a lot of things that aren't. And the solutions that are most helpful are ones that are flexible. So what do I mean by that? Well, for one client who was really formally establishing a business and had investors and was following a very intentional process for business building and growth, that meant that the business needed to be set up like a corporation from day one. Now, what do I mean by that? Because it's probably something that you're not familiar with. Well, it meant that it needed a board of directors, and it meant that there needed to be all of these policies around how the business was going to run, and there needed to be employees with contracts and stock granted and ownership defined and capitalization tables about the actual value of the company. This was very intentionally a business that said, I plan to be a very big player in the future, and from the beginning, I need to act like it. Now, all of that information is incredibly valuable. Having a board of directors who can provide and guide and advise is something everybody should have, whether you have it in your personal life or you have it in your business, even if it's 2 people versus 10. It's helpful to have outside advisors with different expertise. That's how boards are set up. Everybody has a different lane where they're experts in. And it's also helpful to know what the ownership structure is of your company and how much value it is. But sometimes for some small businesses, it's not necessary. In fact, it's just noise and overhead where the business owner is going to be spending more money managing that stuff than actually leveraging from it. So the very first thing that I learned is that one size doesn't fit all. Sure, of course, there are things that everybody needs, but depending on your business structure and your setup, you may need things differently. Another example of how I learned this was I was working with a client and they were looking for some support, and they were already in this conversation before I had come on board. And we took a meeting, and very immediately I could see that this service provider was offering a very specific framework for how to do business. And basically the agreement was, we'll come in, we'll implement it for you, and then you run your business this way forever and ever and ever. And what became very clear very quickly is that there was no room for flexibility. In fact, they called it a system. They were able to describe the process. It was very regimented and a little bit overhead intensive. It was going to cost some money to just run the system itself. And I'm not talking technology. This was like processes and stuff. And upon interrogating it further, it was a really bad fit for this entrepreneur. Now, that first business that I talked about, they probably could have benefited from that level of structure because they needed it. But the business that was getting this pitch to them, it was really overbought and misaligned. They need the ability to be flexible and nimble and creative and act on the fly. And this had so many checks and balances, decision points and pieces of documentation that there wasn't possible. In fact, it was going to constrain the growth of the business versus unlocking it, which is exactly the reason. Now, is what they built bad? No. Can it work for some businesses? Abso-freaking-lutely. Was it the right one for this one? No. And here's the kicker, is that they didn't realize it. So as they were pitching this and questions were getting asked and there was some hesitancy that was really clear on the side of my client, they didn't pick up on the cues. Maybe there was a way that it could be more flexible. Maybe there was a way that only pieces of it could be implemented. We never knew that though, because they were so set on their solution and all of its trappings being exactly the right fit. They didn't take any time to read the room. And so what I learned over the course of the last year, working with a variety of businesses and having a lot of conversations with people that didn't become clients, is that one size does not fit all. And that is a judgment call based on what's happening with the business, based on the business owner, based on the team, based on the clients, based on what you sell, based on the industry, based on what the long-term goals and objectives are for the business. You see, you need expertise to determine what to do. And that really, really falls into the second thing that I learned. So the second thing that I learned is it's all the same. It's all the same. It's just implemented differently. Let's like brass tacks. People need to get paid in the businesses. People need to have job descriptions. You start hiring people, so you need a process for that. You have financial reports and a P&L. You have cash coming in and cash going out, right? You have a sales arm and a marketing arm. You have somebody that's actually running the business and make sure it's happening. You have somebody thinking big and strategically and building goals and plans. All of this is the same. The bottom line, every single business is structured the same way. It does not matter if you are a coach, if you are in education, if you are a psychologist, if you are hospitality, if you are a technology startup, it does not matter. At the end, at the very, very, very end, the functions inside of a business that make it run are exactly the same. You have human resources or people, you have operations, you have technology, you have finance, you have legal, you have some sort of strategy, whether it comes from the CEO or somebody else, you have sales, you have customer success. It all freaking exists with a variety of names in every business out there. Now, some businesses may be so small that those departments are, one person doing all the things. Some businesses may be at a size where some of them are carved out and some of them aren't. Some of them may not be easy to see because of the phase the business is in, but every single business, if it grows to a certain point, will be built exactly the same way. It doesn't matter if you go public or you stay private. It doesn't matter if private equity purchased you. It doesn't matter if you IPO or you are a sole proprietor. In the end, all of these functions are exactly the same. But here's the kicker. No two businesses look alike. No two. Because how they do it is different. Every business sells differently. Every business has a slightly different approach to marketing. Every business operates differently. Every business serves and services and supports their customers in a different way. The foundation of how the business is established, the principles that exist in business, all the same. How you bring it to life, completely different. And this was something that I suspected. I had worked with enough venture capital funds and early stage startups to know that not all things were created equal. And it wasn't until I got into the small business space where I realized that one of the gaps with small business owners is understanding the principles, the business principles of how to set up and stabilize a business. Most of them are amazing at implementation. They have an idea, they get it done. They have an idea, they get it done. They have an idea, they get it done. The gap is because most were entrepreneurs at an early age or left the corporate world a level that didn't allow them visibility into how all of this stuff works. What's gapped is just understanding the principles and business architecture and how these things are set up and why they're there and why they're important and who should do what and what the sniff test around is what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And all of that comes down to having expertise and understanding these principles. And once you master the principles, you can get super creative with implementation. It's one of the reasons that it makes it really easy to support multiple clients in a fractional model, because when you understand the principles, you can pivot and say, okay, so how are you doing things over here? What's important to you? What are your priorities? How is the team set up? And then you can say, okay, so based on what I'm seeing, here's where we have some opportunity and what we can do and where we can unlock growth. We can get more efficient. We can be more productive. But the bottom line is that it's all of the same. It's all the same. So if you understand how business works, then you have the ability to imagine how you could take what business does and implement it for the business at hand. The third thing that I learned is that expertise trumps reinvention. What I have seen over 25 years of working in corporate and with these small businesses is the exact same thing every time. When expertise is lacking, reinvention occurs. Let me say that again. When expertise is lacking, reinvention occurs. And the reason for that is because there isn't the expertise to solve the problem at hand, to get over the bottleneck, to resolve the inefficiency, to see potential solutions to what's in front of you. I'm going to give you a really good example of this. So I was working with a leader, and his issue was that he was getting copied on everything. Like everything. Every single email under the sun, literally every email that went in and out of the business, he was getting copied on. And he could not, for the life of him, see what the priority was. Couldn't figure it out. And to his defense, it's because he was so inundated by communication that it was difficult to see. And we implemented a project management tool. We clarified some roles. I took some stuff on my plate, and yet the problem persisted. And it was because the problem was a cultural problem, not a volume problem. Now, this is where the expertise comes in, because what he was wanting, we had conversations about email servers and organizing mail differently. And there have been a variety of including hiring somebody, which we're going to be doing. There's all of these conversations about, we just need to redo it. We need a different email server. And really what the answer was, is the culture needs to change. There's nothing wrong with your email server. There's nothing wrong with the people that you have working for you. There is a culture that you need to see and touch everything, which works really, really well when you're a really small business. And as soon as you get to a certain place of growth, it's untenable. You can't sustain that volume. And so really what came to light wasn't that we needed new tech and new systems and new processes. It was that we needed to foster a culture of trust in the organization. We needed to be very, very clear around roles and responsibilities, authority, and autonomy. And then we needed to let those people fly. This was a culture issue. It wasn't a process or a technology issue. You see, because once people have clarity about their roles, once they have clarity about what they have authority to decide on, once they are given autonomy to just do their job, you as the leader watch them demonstrate value and deliver on results over and over and over and over again. You foster an environment of trust. When you foster an environment of trust, you know what happens? They stop copying you on everything because they trust that you're going to let them do their job and you trust that they're going to get it done. Now, while there still is a large volume of email and there definitely needs to be a system and executive assistant is on the way in, it's because the business is growing. It's no longer this problem that we had where every single email that was running through the company, including replies and et cetera, was coming into an inbox. That was a cultural issue. Once we solve that, once we get that done and dusted, once we adjust and pivot, then we can look at what we want to do. And that's what I mean by expertise trumps reinvention, because in this case, he was ready to burn the boats. Literally, I'm going to delete all my email. I'm going to burn the boats. We're going to go to a new email server. We're going to start clean. And the thing is that I knew, based on my expertise, that burning the boats was not going to solve the problem, because the problem wasn't the email. And this is where small businesses can get into trouble when they don't have the expertise that they need. They don't have the advisors that they need. They don't have that give and take, that ebb and flow of conversation. What can happen, not always, but what can happen is they get distracted. It's easier and faster to burn the boats than to go find the expert to help solve the problem. It's easier and faster to go burn the boats because you don't want to spend time diagnosing what's happening. But see, here's the thing is you're going to burn the boats, you're going to build new ones, and they're still going to take on water. No matter what you do, those boats aren't going to be better than the ones that you burned before because you haven't solved the problem. And this is where expertise really comes into play. And that's what can be a secret weapon. So if you are interviewing for a job, or you are starting a business, or you are looking to bring other people in to help you in your business or your team, what you want to do is you really want to test how much expertise they have and what they do with it. Because it's one thing to be really smart and have a lot of skills and experience. Experience is different than expertise. And so what you want to do is you want to get into conversation and you want to understand, based on all the stuff that you know, based on the 10 years you worked in the industry, based on all of these clients that you've worked with, what do you know? What are you so good at that when you come in and you see our lay of the land, you'll intrinsically know what to do next? Talk to me about that. Give me examples where you've taken your expertise and you've helped solve problems, where you've helped to remove roadblocks, where you've innovated, where you've increased growth. You want to have dialogue, whether you're the one that's the expert or you're the one hiring people with the expertise around what the secret sauce is and how they've been successful using it in the past. Because if they can tell you what the secret sauce is and they cannot tell you how they've used it successfully in the past with real tangible results, stop the conversation and go find somebody else. There are plenty of people that are experts out there, plenty of people that cannot implement their knowledge in a meaningful way in a business. What you need to find is the person that has the right expertise and the right implementation ability and credibility to deliver on what you need. Because at the end, if you're constantly reinventing in your business, all you're doing is getting distracted. All you're doing is spending money. And what isn't happening is that your business is not growing. Every time you go into reinvention mode, you pause. You pause your business. Your goal should be, if you are a business owner or a team leader or whatever, is to continually iterate and problem solve And to the best of your ability, see the need for reinvention coming so that you can work on the transformation while you are still doing the thing that's working. The fourth thing I learned, and I have learned this lesson over and over and over and over and over and over. And I feel like at some point, maybe at the end of my life, I will have finally figured out how to take the lesson that I have learned and just be cool with it. So what I have learned is that sometimes you need to know when it's just, I don't know, am I Pollyanna? Maybe. Am I an optimist? Maybe. Just always think that there's hope. There's always a way. There's always something that can be done. And what I have learned through lots of conversations, a couple of clients that I don't work with anymore, and a few other experiences in general in the past year, is that I need to be aware and I need to listen to my intuition saying no before I jump in. Now, have I done anything detrimental? No. Have I worked for free? No. Have I tanked my business? No. What I will say is that I got myself into a couple of situations where eyes wide open, I saw it coming, and I had a feeling that was going to be how it shook out. And then it was really messy to disentangle. And relationships are fine. Everything's intact. Like there was no harm, no foul. But what there was is a lot of frustration on my part. There's a lot of frustration. There was a lot of wasted time. There was me not finding, kind of a better opportunity and just going with the one in front of me. And that ends up being a frustrating situation eventually, because when you're in the wrong opportunity or you take a rate lower than you really want because you think you can help somebody, or you really, really want to work for that company, so you take a job that's one level below where you are because you know you'll make it back up someday. Issue is that you waste time and potentially communicate to the world that this is the sort of work that you do. This is the sort of businesses that you work for. These are the roles that you do. And that may not be what you're wanting to do. Now, like I said, nothing catastrophic since I've started my business has happened. But what I have learned is that in chasing the desire to grow the business and chasing the desire to have stability, because that's really what I'm after, I said yes to everything. Even things where I was like, that's probably not the best idea. Probably shouldn't do that. And for what it's worth, I learned every single time. But what the lesson is that I have is that sometimes you just need to know that it's a no and be okay saying that it's a no. And that the kind thing to do is to disqualify opportunities, whatever those may be. So if you're interviewing for a job and they're like, you're actually more qualified for this level below, and you're like, yeah, I'm not actually. Thank you so much. But if that's all that you're offering me, I'm going to keep it moving because there's another job. There's another opportunity. There's another client. There's another way through. It is really okay to say this isn't the right fit or no. And I will learn that over and over and over again. I cannot tell all y'all how many jobs I took in corporate that I should have said no to because I was chasing advancement. I do not know how many times I accepted a project or a crazy business trip or something because I really thought that it was going to get me ahead. And now looking back, 25 years in the rearview mirror, what I can say is every experience I had, I gained expertise. Every experience that I had kind of went into my toolkit and taught me something and helped me get to where I am today. And also, I wasted a whole bunch of time. I made a decision when I was in corporate shortly before I left corporate to stay when I knew I needed to go. I knew I needed to go. And I was at a really significant crossroads. And I decided to stay for my team. And that was a huge mistake because if I had started then looking for a new role, if I had taken that time to re-engage my network, if I had been really, really intentional about what I would and wouldn't do in the business, I wouldn't have lost a year and a half. I would have been able to have that year and a half to figure out what I want to do. Now, whether it was start this fractional business that I have, which is something I had always wanted to do, or go find a new corporate role, we'll never know. Sliding doors, we'll never be back there. That moment, that point in time where I knew the answer was no, you should not stay here anymore, ignored it. And I paid the consequences of it for the next 18 months and the year after that. And I'm now just coming out of a fog. So one would think that when I learned that lesson the last time, that it would stick. But clearly this is something that I am still working on and evolving. And the good news is that was probably the most catastrophic time I ignored the need to say no. And anything now where I'm ignoring the need to say no is relatively innocuous. But I wanted to share that because we all have a point in time where we're in a conversation or we're in a job or we're working for a client and we're like, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere. This isn't good for me. This isn't good for you. We should really separate ways. And the hardest thing to do is to take action on that. The hardest thing to do is get out of your chair and move. I'm speaking from experience. I decided to stay because I convinced myself that it was the best thing to do for 200 people. The reality was that it was letting me avoid doing the hard work that I had to do later. It was letting me delay reinvigorating my network. It was letting me delay interviewing for jobs. It was letting me delay being vulnerable and telling my closest people that I needed to move on and I needed help. It let me hide. And I suffered the consequences of that and continue years later to still feel the ripples of that. So this lesson, sometimes you need to know it's a no. It's probably the biggest one and the one that I'm working on as I go into the next year. And this is in all dimensions of my life. So I think one of the things that we talk about a lot here on this podcast is that there isn't a bright line between personal and professional. There's just not. There is a really clear, blurry line. And these lessons that I have learned over the last year professionally all come full circle back into my personal life. They all do. I am in a really interesting family law situation, and these lessons have taught me that I need to get the best experts across a variety of dimensions. So what does that mean? It's therapists and it's lawyers and it's psychiatrists and it's doctors and you name it. And there's a variety of experts involved because I don't have the expertise. Somebody else does, and I need that. And I also have taken these lessons and learned that I can't just hire the best expert. I actually need to know what results they get, how they navigate this stuff. Is their experience aligned with the experience that I need? And are their solutions aligned with the sort of solutions that hopefully we can get to? This saying no, I had to say no to almost everything in my life because I'm a single mom with 3 kids. And I'm the person that lives from a place of yes. You ask me to do something, I say yes. You ask me to do something, I say yes. You ask me to do something, I say yes. One really good example of this is I started running ads for my business 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I realized that the next 3 weeks, I cannot focus on that. I do not have time. I can't do it. And I paused them all. And that was a little bit painful because we'd made work and groundwork and whatever. But I had to learn that it wasn't going to kill me to wait a couple of weeks until I could be clear-headed and I could manage it the right way and not be reckless with spending. So all of these lessons have really kind of bled through all lanes of my life. And I wanted to share them with you because I hadn't done a reflection in a while, hadn't given you an update. And I was kind of looking back on the last 6 to 9 months. And this is what really came to light. So I hope that this was helpful to you today. And until we meet again, please know that you are wise and you are strong and you are capable, and I believe in you.